is Mary Grace Ketner. Mary Grace brings listeners an elegant gift of story, stirred by passion and a deep love of tall tale telling. Long, silent, traditional oral narrative stores back to life in her gentle hands. Born in Kerrville, Texas, with teaching degrees from Texas Lutheran University in Seguin and Texas State University in San Marcos, Mary Grace has now called herself a San Antonian for 4 decades. Selected for inclusion in both the Texas Commission on the Arts Touring Artist roster and the Mid-America Arts Alliance since 2008. You can also find her on her own website at www.talesandlegends.net. Busy writer, producer, and teaching artist, her Storytelling World Gold Award-winning CD, Ghostly Gals and Spirited Women, is available along with books and CDs right over there. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mary Grace Ketner.
Thank you, Bill. Ese Marqués de Aguayo, he owned land from Zacatecas all the way up to the interior of Texas. And one night he made a ride that is still the talk of all this land of horse riding history. Dobie heard his stories from the old women at their matates, and the old men who pulled the burros along those crooked trails, those who have made of it their own saga of the sea. Now, the Marqués, of all the lands that he had, his favorite, even above Los Cinco Lagos, was Villa de los Patos, and it was there in mature and vigorous years he took his new young bride, Angela. And also living there was his comely nephew, Don Felix. Now, it was the custom of the Marqués to make long journeys out to supervise his various properties and enterprises. He might be away for weeks or months at a time. And it was on his return from just such a journey as this that he made a discovery that made him as jealous as Othello. Now, he was a man who acted quickly, and no sooner had he ordered it than it came to pass. And what he ordered that day was for a caballado to be made up. 6 men, 5 peons, and his own mozo of the stirrup, and 12 horses. And no sooner were they all gathered up than he set out for Mazapil, which was a mining camp, also one of his properties. Now, as the crow flies, Mazapil is some 20 kilometers from Villa de los Patos, but around those winding trails, it's closer to 24. They rode out, and about 4 kilometers out, the Marqués ordered one of his peones and 2 horses to wait for him upon his return. And about 4 kilometers further on, the same thing, a peon and 2 horses. And all the way to Mazapil, in this way, he set up postas. Now, when he arrived at Mazapil, it was near sunset, and he had many friends, and it was not long before, with a couple of bottles of brandy de Paras, possibly more than a couple, they were into a game of Monte. And after just a few rounds with a polite con permiso, the Marqués excused himself and stepped out of the room. He went out into the stable where a horse had already been prepared to him, but he was setting out on a journey for which he wanted no witnesses. And he straightaway killed the peon who had prepared that horse for him and dispatched his body quickly in a place that had already been prepared. And then he rode. He rode for honor. He rode for vengeance. He rode for blood. It is said that there is no telling how speedily he rode, but in what seemed like an incredibly short time, he arrived at the last posta he had set up on his way up. When he rode into that curve of the road, it said that his horse's legs splayed out straight and it fell to the ground dead. He leapt off that horse and they removed the saddle and placed it onto a new horse, and he set out again for the next posta. By some miracle, every horse was able to survive until it reached the next post, and then it collapsed in death. And the horses were exchanged. In almost no time, it seemed, he arrived at Villa de los Patos, and he went straight to the bedroom of his young wife, Ángela, and just as he suspected, his nephew was there. He was able to kill the woman before either of them knew he was in the room. And then, when his nephew went to attack him, he turned the dagger upon him and killed him with his own knife, and then arranged the bodies in the bed so that it appeared that the murder and suicide had been committed by the betrayer. It is said that a watchful servant was outside the window, and him he also killed, and then went back and gathered up another horse. 2 more deaths were involved in that exchange, and he headed out again for Mazapil, stopping each time to change horses, the same thing happening, the horse dying, taking off the saddle and putting it on the other horse, only this time he also killed the man who was waiting. He arrived back at Mazapil before the dawn and sat down again to continue playing cards with the men who were there still drinking and playing. The next day, when news arrived of the murders, the Marqués expressed great stress and great surprise. He ordered a funeral to be said, a royal funeral, and many masses. And yet, as it always seems to be, the Marqués was a suspect in the murder, even though it could be shown that he was at Mazapil at both the beginning and the end of the evening on which the murders occurred. And yet, no case could be made against him. It was said that there was a young servant girl who had been a witness, but she was not allowed to testify. And yet, the rumors persisted, rumors as he called them, that the Marqués was involved in this murder. Why, the story was told as far away as the Escorial in Spain. And the King of Spain had his viceroy look into the case, but nothing was ever made of it. Many years later, when the Marqués was old and lived alone in La Casa de la Cadena, where still the vine of grapes is turned into wine, an oidor, a wise judge from Guadalajara, wanted to find out the truth, and he decided that he would go out and visit the Marqués and try to make friends with him and gain his confidence and get him to tell his own story, to confess. But he knew that if the Marqués did confess, it would still be only the word of one outstanding, respected man against that of another. And so he took with him a witness, a companion, who would be a witness to the Marques's story. About 3 days they had spent together, eating together and talking every evening. And the oidor felt that he must have gained by now the confidence of the Marqués. They always went into a particular salon in the evenings, and on this day, the oidor took his companion into the room and hid him beneath a table that was covered with a heavy green drape. And then after supper, when the Marqués and the oidor came in to talk, the oidor said to him, "My Marqués, nothing can be done to you at this point. The law cannot be carried out, and yet, as a man of intense curiosity, I long to know how you kept the game of Monte going in Masapil and the game of daggers in Villa de los Patos." "Ah," said the Marqués, "I will tell you. For when a man has achieved such a thing, he longs for it to be known." The oidor was amazed at the willingness of this man to tell him his full story. He sat down and listened, and the Marqués pulled up a chair against that green table and stared across it at the oidor, and he told him everything. He told him about the caballada, the postas, the murder, arranging the bodies, everything that had happened that night. And when he finished, the oidor said, "Witness, come forth. We have heard what we came to hear." But nothing happened. "Witness, come forth," he said. "We have heard what we came to hear." The Marqués leaned back in his chair. "Witness," he said, "why do you not speak?" And the Marqués said, "Porque los muertos no hablan." Because the dead do not speak. And he reached across the table and pulled up that green cloth, showing beneath it the curled up dead body of the witness. It is said that from all that riding, the legs and knees of the Marqués had such strength that he was able to strangle the man with his knees underneath the table. And then he pulled out a stack of papers and his pen and ink, and he said to the oidor, "You have the power to make inquests. You will write that this man, whose name I know not, but which is known to you, died in my house this night of apoplexy." The oidor wrote and left, and the process of law never went